Sacred speech is conversation that deepens. It deepens relationship and enhances the fullness of our presence wherever we are and whomever we are with. It is dialogue centered in what exists here and now between us. Hello and welcome back to this channel. I'm combining my two great loves, a good cup of coffee and making YouTube videos. And in this video, I'm going to be creating a challenge for you over this next week, 2 weeks, month, wherever you want to extend it to. And that is, I'm challenging you to question how well you actually listen, and if that listening transcends into what could be considered sacred listening. I really want you to dive deep into the individual conversations you have with your friends, your family members, the people that you get coffee from, basically questioning yourself, how well are you actually absorbing a conversation? But you might be asking, why is this important, especially since this is a spirituality channel, a pagan channel? The reason this is important is really, if you cannot listen to the individual across from you, or the YouTube video that you're watching right now, how could you ever listen and hear the gods? How could you hear the ancestors, the spirits, or really any kind of connection you're seeking within spirituality? When we're actually training our discipline to listen to other human beings, we are also training the discipline to hear the gods, the spirits, the divine. And so how can you do this? If you actually want to do this, you want to take this YouTube video seriously, and you do want to practice your sacred listening skills, here are some ways to do that. And the first way to do this is to truly enter every conversation as a challenge, as a way to challenge yourself and to hone your discipline in sacred listening. So anytime you engage in a conversation, set yourself in a mindset, take a moment, pause, and say, okay, this is going to be a sacred conversation. And how can I improve my sacred listening? The next part of this discipline is trying not to think about yourself. This is one of the hardest things. Catch yourself every time you're in a conversation with somebody else. Are you actually listening to them, or are you thinking about yourself? Are you thinking about the next thing that you're going to say? So many times we listen to a conversation and we tune out midway through because we've already chosen what we're going to say, and we stop listening to the other person. And one of the ways to help combat this is to repeat back what they're saying in your mind. So if they're talking about, oh, at work today, I had this problem, my boss did this, that, the other thing, actually sit there and kind of echo their words rather than thinking about what you're going to say, the advice you're going to give. This is really hard, and it can feel a little silly at times, but trust me, anytime I feel myself getting lost, I return to this. Okay, what are they actually saying? Echo that in my thoughts rather than allowing my thoughts to continue to rattle on. And that's the other piece of advice I have for you. If you actually feel yourself drifting, if you're thinking about something else, not part of this conversation, if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, stop yourself, return to that discipline, and return to that conversation with that individual rather than continuing to think and ramble on about whatever else your mind's doing. This is really part of the discipline. Every single time you feel yourself overextend, you start drifting away, correct yourself, just like any meditative practice. Another way to stay engaged within someone's conversation is, rather than planning that next thing you're going to say, ask questions rather than just giving direct advice. Just like that quote I shared in the same very beginning, when we don't actually dive deep into things and we stay at the surface level, we're not actually digging into the root of what we're talking about. And so when we ask questions to go further into a conversation, rather than just like peeling away and thinking about the next thing or bouncing to the next conversation, we're diving closer into the sacred conversation and what can truly come out of the depth of conversation as well. And also for Norse pagans and Viking enthusiasts alike, remember that one of the most important things discussed in the Havamal in the very beginning is learning how to keep your mouth shut and listen to those around you, and also remembering to learn when in company wiser than yourself. And considering most of us have something to teach one another, I would say most people can be considered wiser than yourself. And if you go into every life situation just assuming someone's wiser than you, I believe you're going to learn something more often than not. Too often we attempt to fill every social moment with chatter as we're terrified of the silence between us, and often we are. We're scared of who or what might jump into the conversation, the voices from below or behind. This is another quote from Bill Plotkin. Now, this actually comes from the book Soulcraft. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. Really good book. I'm going to be bringing it up a lot in this kind of series of challenges. And this is my final piece of advice, and that is, don't be afraid to be silent. After someone finishes talking, sit there and think about what they said. Don't just immediately jump in. How many times do we do this? The moment the person we're talking with finishes a conversation, we immediately respond. Instead, sit there and pause, or say, hey, I need to think about that for a moment. Give me a moment. And I think the person across from you is going to appreciate that more when you actually pause and say, let me think about that. And again, let's return to spirituality. If you feel you're receiving a message from the gods, from the spirits, from the ancestors, you have a spiritual moment, take a moment. Don't just immediately react to it. Be like, whoa, I need to absorb this for a second. And so truly, I genuinely believe that when we go into a conversation, practicing what I just talked to you with, it really changes our perspective. It really changes the nature and the depth of our conversation. And genuinely, as we move into this election year and the political climate around it, I believe the only solution is we need to stop trying to talk over one another and start listening to one another instead in a sacred way.